Okie dokie, we're on the easier part of 5.5. So we're just using these product to sum formulas and then the sum to products. This first one looks like cosine u sine v, and so I'm just filling in 5x for u and 4x for v in that formula. And the first part of your homework will really just be doing this, switching from a product to a sum, and then other parts of the homework will be actually solving like we will in examples to come. But you can see here I'm just adding 5x and 4x and subtracting 5x and 4x. And then the last thing I do is distribute that 1/2 to both trig functions. And that's it. So that'll be the first part of your homework, just rewriting the product as a sum. Now that second one looks like sine u cosine v. And so again, I'm just filling in the 5x for u and the 3x for v into that formula. Also, you'll want to stay tuned to the very end of the video. Andrew is showing off some of his soccer tricks that I think were the ones you were asking me about a couple weeks ago, back when we were actually in school. And Otis also makes a good guest appearance. Alright, this one's super similar to the first one. Distribute that 1/2, and you've changed your product to a sum. Alright, on to the sum to product formulas. These are the ones more likely that you'll have to solve. So we are changing cosine of 195 plus cosine of 105 to that formula up top. So 2 cosine 195 plus 105 over 2 cosine of 195 minus 105 over 2. And so these formulas should look pretty similar, or at least remind you of the first ones that we did, because they're just the reverse of each other. Alright, now I've got 2 cosine of 300 over 2 and cosine of 90 over 2. Alright, dividing those, I end up with cosine of 150 and the cosine of 45. Those are on my unit circle, so the cosine of 150 is -3 over 2, the cosine of 45 is √2 over 2, so the 2 and one of my 2's in the denominator cancels, and then you just multiply the fractions, and that's your answer. Alright, this one looks like the sine u plus sine v. So I'm going to plug into that formula to get 2 sine of 5x plus 3x over 2 cosine of 5x minus 3x over 2 equals 0. Alright, so 2 sine of 8x over 2 and cosine of 2x over 2 equals 0. 2 sine of 4x times cosine x equals 0. And this is almost like a factored formula, and so we're going to set the first part equal to 0 and then the second part equal to 0 and solve both of those. So 2 sine of 4x equals 0, and then if you divide by 2, that 2 just goes away. So when sine is 0, is it 0, pi, and then I kept going because we end up dividing by 4. So hopefully that makes sense in a second, but every pi is when sine equals 0. When you divide all of these by 4, they end up all being in that interval 0 to 2 pi. So now I have 0, pi over 4, 2 pi over 4 is pi over 2, and then 3 pi over 4. 4 pi over 4 is just pi. 5 pi over 4, 6 pi over 4 turns into 3 pi over 2, and 7 pi over 4. Right, so I went that far out because once I divide by 4, they all end up being in that interval. Right, usually you would just do like 0 and pi and stop. but that dividing by 4 makes you have more answers than that. And then cosine equals 0 when x is pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. Those are already included in the ones I got when I solved for sine of 4x equals 0. So all of my answers are right there. And that is it for the lesson. Enjoy and do notice.
There we go.
Nice. Release the Otis.
Oh, into the woods. Don't put the T on.